What's going on, gamers? So we got a video here yesterday by Digital Foundry, which I wanted to react to. I haven't got a chance to get to it yet. We saw some text that was read on a video I did before, though, but here's the full-blown video of should I buy a PS5 Pro instead of waiting for the PlayStation 6? This is actually a really good question right now after what we just saw with Resident Evil Requiem. And they're pretty much deep diving into it to see that is every game going to be able to run 60 frames per second, though? And if you can get 60 frames per second with PSSR2, should you be comfortable waiting with the PS5 Pro and seeing what happens with the PS6 when it comes out? And would you be comfortable just having that? Because I think eventually they are going to drop the price of that as we get closer to PS6 and this market's not going to stay crazy. So the question here is, will developers take advantage of the PSSR2 to keep games at 60 frames? I'm like, well, you were kind of getting a lot of games at 60 frames on the base if you go to performance to a certain extent. So I don't see why the Pro with PSSR2, after seeing what you were able to do with the latest game, RE9, you know what I mean? If you got that at 60, ray tracing 60 frames, and it's pretty much stabilizing, while all these other games that are coming out, because developers are being lazy, will not be able to keep it at 60 frames per second with performance. And that's what most people play anyways. If we take a look at things historically, Mark Cerny said about almost 75 to 80% of PlayStation gamers choose performance mode because they want that 60 frames because games already look good anyways. And that was with the PS5. Now we got the Pro taking a pretty much huge leap, more than we probably expected when we saw that Resident Evil 9 performance. So the question here is, should I buy a PS5 Pro now, or should I stay on the base PS5 and wait for the PS6, right? And there's some people that probably haven't even got a PS5 yet, though I think that that's a lot lesser now. When you realize Sony's at like 90 million now, that's a lot. We're not talking about 20 million or 30 million anymore. So this is my early analysis on this video that we're about to get into. And I want you guys to let me know what you think, because I think getting a PS5 Pro now is definitely worth it, because we've never had any type of technology upscaling like this compared to the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X. Yeah, they were cool, but they didn't have this. So Sony pretty much has something like a frame gen now. Let's get into this and let me know what you guys think.
Is the best argument for getting the PS5 Pro actually the PS6? I can't see enough of a difference between PS5 and Pro. However, since cross-gen games will likely be downgraded to 30 FPS on PS5, do you think the Pro will be the cheaper alternative to a PS6 that will still run games at 60 FPS?
See, and when he says I can't see enough of a difference, this is what was going on before. But after the PSSR2, that is no longer up for question. That's over. This is kind of like asking things, I think, pre-PSSR2. And I could understand that, even though there were still some differences, though, because look at Ghost of Yotei. Native 1800p, 60 frames per second with ray tracing. It's just the developers were being lazy, and they were still learning the ropes. I don't want to hear any of that when you got Ghost of Yotei doing that embarrassing Unreal Engine 5.
I don't know what you think, John, but the Pro is basically of the PlayStation 5 generation. The question is the extent to which Sony are still wedded to the idea of console generations going forward, which is kind of like, you know, they made a statement that they were with PlayStation 5, but then we had like suddenly a huge amount of cross-gen games. That stretched like quite a long time across the generation, and then there's sort of like the hardware capabilities. That CPU isn't really going to be getting any better, so there'll be certain games that just will have to run based on the constraints of PS5 level rather than, you know, what the extra GPU stuff can give you. I don't know. It's tricky one. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, answering his question directly, I don't think that is like a situation where we will have games that are 30 FPS on a base PS5 that are suddenly like a stable 60 on Pro. That's
possible.
I mean, just owing to the CPU alone, it's just not going to be a thing that happens, right? So I don't think that this idea of like the PS5 Pro being the cheaper alternative that will run games at 60. Not that I think, I mean, we don't, man.
I think the danger is there's going to be not enough PS5 Pros out there for developers to really make the full use of its capabilities.
I think that's also partial.
I don't know, because we got to see the results when GTA 6 comes out. I think that's going to move a lot. And Sony always has these marketing rights, and developers are now used to doing insane settings no matter what. They're used to going down to the Steam Deck now. It's a thing now. Where it's like, oh, I got to do Steam Deck. I got to do all these NVIDIA, AMD drivers. I got to do PS5, PS5 Pro. I got to do Xbox. I got to do Switch 2 now. That's pretty much out of the ballpark now. I think that that's a thing that nobody's going to have to worry about. And Sony has the marketing rights, and they're going to move you the most games, and it's going to be a demand. All their first-party games are going to get it, and all the huge third-party games are going to get it, because why would they not want that? Pretty much every game going forth is going to be supporting that. You know what I mean? It's like, when you think about that, you still have 3 years left of the PlayStation generation easily, with cross-gen being 4. That's 100% out the window. You're going to have cross-gen in 2028 and 2029 and probably 2030. So when you think about all those games, they're all going to get PSSR support, and they're going to keep improving it. So I don't see how that's not going to be a thing. And with performance mode, you're going to get close to that. You know what I mean? I don't see how it wouldn't be the case. GTA 6 is going to tell us everything.
Actually, yeah, like these things are value add consoles. I think they're really cool and interesting, but like it's still part of the generation. And that does, and let's look at it this way. Xbox Series S versus Xbox One X. There are areas where Xbox One X is superior to Series S, right?
GPU wise, yeah.
Yeah.
But if this logic were applied to that generation, it would not have held water. And it did not come to pass at all, did it? And we had a lot of cross.
He has a good point, except that it doesn't have machine learning and like frame gen and stuff on there. That's what makes a huge difference here.
But as we saw, there's, the One X actually, it did not deliver what this is proposing here. And in fact, it felt like it became almost of an afterthought to a degree, where it didn't receive the optimizations it could have. So it didn't leverage its strengths over Series S. And as a result, Series S usually ended up with better versions of things. Although it had its own limitations in slightly other areas too, but still, I think you should never buy like, I'm going to buy this mid-gen console in preparation for the next generation is a bad strategy.
Yeah, if you're thinking like that, I can understand.
Enjoy the games of this generation, with enhancements.
Yeah.
Alex, this is basically like custom RDNA 2 with extra RT and machine learning bits versus RDNA 5.
Yeah.
You kind of suspect it's going to be no competition, really.
I really don't think. I mean, we'll have to see. Obviously, the RDNA 5, although it's talked about and hyped up a lot, maybe we'll have to see what it means when it's brought out in console form, given other constraints in terms of memory speed, all these other things. But I do think it'll be quite a bit different. The fact that it required 1 full year to port what would be FSR4 and longer to a PSSR 2.0, which we still have yet to see, it just shows you that there's limitations there in the PS5 Pro on the GPU side. And the main limiting factor, as you guys point out, would be that CPU actually. And I don't think there's going to be a big, it would be a really weird scenario where a developer says, we have extra GPU performance, let's make the game 60 FPS on a PS5 Pro, but not drop res on a PS5 to do the same thing. I'm trying to think of what type of game that would be, and I'm just not sure if it exists at the moment, that type of design. So I don't think so. I also think, like John said, this value add console idea, it was already a little bit teetering sometimes on Xbox One X, where we would see, like John described, upgrades where we could have seen it being better. Like they would keep sometimes things at Xbox One standards, but then just up the res, which is like, we should.
Yeah, there were a number of titles, particularly in the latter stages, once Series X had come along, where there was an Xbox One version of the game, and it was slightly enhanced for Xbox One X, but some of the cutbacks made for the original Xbox One version permeated into the One X version, which is kind of like, what's going on here? That doesn't really make sense.
And there wasn't good reasons for that, and I think, due to the development ease of it, and we've already seen it quite more often than not sometimes with PS5 Pro, is that the upgrade is just like, we increase the res. Not every developer goes the extra mile to add in an extra GPU feature.
I think
Now, if we were talking about before the Resident Evil Requiem showcase, I can understand what they're saying, but now we have something different here. I just don't understand how we're not seeing that now when they're saying that a lot of games are going to be able to go to 120. You got Resident Evil jumping from 60 to 120 frames per second. If you already got that type of jump, why can't games just scale down from that 120 and cut that down to 60 frames, even if you had to make that cut back? It doesn't make sense to me with PSSR2. I don't see how any game is not going to get that upgrade either going forth here and be added in. It just doesn't make any sense. Definitely all the big titles, because Sony is still the main selling factor in the industry with their base. You're getting over 100 plus million. Even Nintendo's getting third-party support, and you're talking about PS6, but it's like, yeah, but they're still going to be supporting Switch 2 with a lot of these newer games. The technology difference now, it doesn't really matter. They're going to still get that 60 frames per second on these games. All you need is to hit performance mode. We're not talking about quality here. I think those games will be fine. And if there's a game that is going to tell us anything, it is going to be GTA 6. Going down some of these comments, this guy says, as a RE fan, I'm glad I got a Pro last Black Friday. It feels like Resident Evil Requiem is a massive turning point for how the PS5 Pro will be perceived. Yeah, they may have made this prior to that. You never know. Because this is a DF Direct Q&A. And I think what I'm saying is that if you're looking at the PS5 Pro historically before this patch, they're not going to understand that type of notion. But now it's a new game changer, and we need to see these other comparisons so that we can really solidify this more.
Final point on this one is basically a lot of it may depend on the nature of the development environment that Sony provides for PlayStation 6. Will it be basically the same development environment as PlayStation 5? So you would possibly be able to tap into like features that are in the SDK, or will it be separate, as was the case with PS4 and PS5? Microsoft had this attempt to basically unify the generations in terms of development with the GDK. So maybe they'll go down that route, but at the same time, I still think developers will be focusing, on where they get the best return on their investment, and the Pro is going to be like a vanishingly small amount of the overall audience that they're going to be addressing.
I know what they mean if you're looking at it from that standpoint, but when you think about teaming up with PlayStation, you're already getting a favor, so Sony is going to demand that. So definitely as it moves more consoles with GTA and all these other games coming out, I give it a means, because when you think about moving to the PS6, that is the base thing. It's going to be millions moving real quick because that's the base console. Like there's majority of people having a PS5. That's obvious. And depending on how much they drop the price and depending on what people want. At the end of the day, let me know what you guys think. I think for the most part, it's going to be fine. Doesn't matter what you think about it, because the same thing could have been said at the Steam Deck, but why are these developers still supporting Steam Deck? How many consoles did that move, or units? But what, 5 million or barely that in 5 years? I don't know. I don't think that really matters. So yeah, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks for all the support again. Keep gaming no matter what platform you're on. Peace, guys.